Just give it a minute to come through. Good morning, everybody. Dr. Jean Fourie here. And I hope you're all having a good spring day this morning. We're going to be talking about writing. And in particular, today, I want to speak about the writing process, because this is really crucial for remedial teachers in remedial sessions to do. Writing is what gets you to do spelling and to see the ideas that the person has. And it's just a really good way to practice all the skills that are required. So we're going to be having a look in particular at the writing process. And when I'm speaking about process, I'm speaking about a not a once off, but a thing that happens numerous times, and it is something that has a beginning, and you work through the stages, and then you get to a final end product. And the writing process can start when you make a little booklet of some sort, and I'm going to just leave the instructions and a link to a video on how to make a little booklet. It's called an 8-page book. And you make an 8-page book or a little tiny book from one A4 piece of white paper, and the directions are here in the slide how to do it, and I will also put a link to a little short video that I made to show people how this works. And this is a useful thing because you can just make a quick little booklet and write a short little story in the booklet and in any remedial session that you do. But you don't have to use 8-page booklets. You can just use pieces of paper or whatever material is useful in your particular context. So the writing process has these stages and steps, and it is embedded in the curriculum and assessment policy statement for the Department of Education. If you look in the curriculum statement in any of the language curricula, you will see these particular keywords, looking for ideas, organizing information, putting information into graphic form, doing drafts, writing, editing, publishing work. And these keywords go across all grades, and they start as soon as the child starts school and they start holding a pen and pencil. We are starting with this process of taking ideas that we have and putting them onto paper, onto a page, so that you are writing your ideas down. And that's the crucial thing about the writing process, is to be able to write down so that somebody else can read what you have written. The first phase of the writing process is where we are generating ideas. And here you can use all sorts of ways to generate ideas, but a useful one is brainstorming. And you sit with the child or a group of children, and you decide what your topic is going to be that you're going to be talking about. and the ideas are generated, and in a brainstorming session, all ideas are accepted and everyone participates and contributes, and nobody does judging or criticizing or saying that these ideas that we want to write about are not valid. And we encourage learners to be creative and to write down as many things that they want to maybe write about that particular day. Now I'm going to go through an example with you, and this is a session with a child, and the topic of the day was speaking about wild animals. And the teacher wrote in the middle of an A4 piece of paper, she wrote wild animals, and then with the child brainstormed, what wild animals do you know? And either, depending on the age of the child, either the teacher can do the writing or the learner writes. And in this case, the child, probably about 10 years old, could write zebra, spelt with an R on the end, zebra, and then did a self-correction, crossed it out and said, so the learner has seen this word before, so they had a visual memory of it so that they could cross out the R at the end, zebra. Any writing is also an opportunity for you as the remedial teacher to do phonics, to look at the sounds and to see what sound do you hear at the end of this word. If I can just ask people to mute their microphones. So if you listen to the word zebra, there is no r on the end. Zebra, zebra, it ends with an which is not the sound, and this is where phonics becomes complicated, but and where you need to have your visual memory intact for what the word also looks like in order to spell correctly. Okay, so the child knows about baboon and was able to spell it correctly. The facilitator said, what other animals do you know about? Wild animals, I know about lion. And the child was able to write lion, spelled correctly, Lion. And the teacher said, what other wild animals? Because we're doing brainstorming, so we want to get as many examples as possible. I know about tigers, and was able to write tiger, correctly. What other wild animals do you know? I know about a snake, snake, and here the child was spelled snake correctly, using the magic E to turn the A into an A, snake. And what other wild animals? The child knows about parrots, parrot, and I think that's spelled correctly with a double R, parrot. But if you, as the facilitator, actually don't know the spelling, you can also use this as an opportunity to practice dictionary skills and get out a dictionary and look up to see how do you actually spell the word. Another wild animal that the child knew about was penguin. And penguin, complicated, one of those irregular words, spelled G-U-I-N at the end, and the learner knew how to spell that. Giraffe is the next wild animal, and that looks correct for a spelling, but one can also go and check in the dictionary, have we spelt it correctly? With a double F, E on the end. And then the facilitator said, what other wild animals? Remember, we're brainstorming, so we're trying to get as many examples as possible written down. And the child said, I know about the wild cats, and spelled K-A-T-A. It looks like they spelled with an E initially. So did a self-correction and turned the E into an S to make it cats. And the last wild animal that the child was able to say they know about is an elephant. And if you look at the way the child wrote this, all in nice in capitals, elephant with the sound as a PH, they have actively learned how to spell this word, and they were writing it correctly from visual memory. So the child knew how to spell elephant. Okay, so now we've brainstormed and we've got a whole lot of knowledge activated, prior knowledge activated about what we know about already. If you think about Vygotsky and scaffolding, we want to build on what the child already knows. So we're scaffolding knowledge on prior knowledge. So, which of these wild animals should we write our story about? Because we are going to write a little story now. And you talk the child through choosing one of the topics to write about, and the learner in this case decided to write about the wild cats. So that's the lions and tigers. So now we're getting to the next phase in the writing process, where we are organizing ideas. And here you can use all sorts of ways to assist with organizing the topic. A useful place to start is with oral telling of the story. So let's talk the story through. What story do you want to tell? We're going to speak about wild cats. What do you know about wild cats? And you spend a bit of time speaking about it. Remember that speech, listening and speaking, and reading and writing, all four modalities of language are combined. They work hand in hand. So while you're writing, you're speaking to yourself or you're speaking aloud. And so we want to do a lot of the modality combinations. In the organizing phase, you are trying to find some kind of grouping. You're grouping things together. So we're going to be speaking about wild cats, lions and tigers and cheetahs. And you might discard some ideas that were brainstormed in the previous phase, and we're not going to speak about giraffes and zebras and elephants. And then you need to organize these ideas in some logical sequence. And there are lots of flow charts and structured organizers, associative networks, ways that you can put together little worksheets or something as you're going with the child to organize your ideas into a logical sequence. Because writing starts at the top of the page and ideas flow one after the other when you're writing, we don't just have everything like in a brainstorm mind map where everything is on one page. We now have to put things into some organized logical structure for our particular story. Okay, so you then get out a blank piece of paper And oh, let me see, which way must I go? You get out a blank piece of paper and you start to organize the ideas. So in this case, we decided to brainstorm in an associative network, which is a mind map, really, and we're associating ideas together. So we've decided to speak about the wild cats. Teacher draws the little cat whiskers in the middle of the page that says cats, and together with the child works out what we're going to speak about. So we spoke about lions earlier, and what do you know about lions? And the child says that lions hunt together, and the lionesses are the ones who hunt, and the lionesses feed their cubs. So the teacher in this case was writing down the ideas to give the child an idea of how we're going to how this works, that we're writing main ideas. So let's see what else, what other big cats do you know about? And the child said that she knows about leopards. And now you let the child do the writing. And the child wrote leopard, Lepads, leopards, which is phonetic spelling. So if you just had to say it one-to-one correspondence, it's leopards. And this would be an opportunity to learn how to spell the word correctly and get out the dictionary again so that we can write the word in a separate place or on a flashcard or in the child's little little dictionary book. And what do we know about leopards? Well, they prey on other animals, little buck and things. And how do we spell prey? And in this case, we're talking about prey, P-R-E-Y, but the child spelled it P-R-I-Y. So this is another opportunity for learning the visual, what the word visually looks like. Get out a little chalkboard, write it, or little whiteboard, write the correct word a couple of times. Leopards live in trees and they sleep in trees as well. So the child knows this information, and because they know it and they're able to speak this information, we're able to write it down with them. So we are learning how to do associations, and we're also learning how to take key words out, important words out of the information that we are dealing with. What other wildcats do you know about? The facilitator can ask. And the child says she knows about black panthers. And writes the word black correctly, B-L-A-C-K, but does not know how to spell panthers, or is articulating the word incorrectly. So when you also are doing these sessions, remember you're not only focusing on writing, you're also focusing on speech. So if the child does not say the word panther correctly, then you can also assist. And we can see that by the spelling of P-A-F-C-O-R-S. So this was really a wild guess at the spelling that the child was making here. So that would be a really good opportunity to take that particular word and learn how to spell panther correctly. What other wild animals do you know about? And the child says, I know about cheetahs. and spells cheetah, C-H-E-E-T-E-B-S, cheetebs. And cheetah, I think it's spelled with an H, cheetahs on the end. We'd have to check out in our dictionary how to spell cheetahs correctly. And what do you know about cheetahs? They run very, very fast, says the child. So we're going to write about fast runs, that the cheetahs run very, very fast. So we are getting down the main ideas that we want to write about, and these ideas are the crucial things that we're going to put in our little story. Okay, so let's see how we move to the next slide. Here. Pick it up. Okay, up one. So the first thing we do is we write the first draft. So the first draft is a rough draft. We're going to write this down. And the rough draft is now where you're taking those ideas that you have brainstormed and you're writing them down one after the other, because writing happens on straight lines and in an orderly sequence. So we are going to do that writing of the first draft. Please note that in the foundation phase, learners will do any corrections on their originals. They don't rewrite the draft. But as children get older, you would take the corrections and the editing and write final corrected versions later. Okay, so here's our first draft, and I'm going to read it with you. So we are writing about the big cats, and the child put the heading cats, and we have our page with the brainstormed sheets that I showed earlier next to us, and we are looking at that and we're deciding what we're going to write about first. And the child decides to write about the cheetah first. So the cheetah, and you can see now that cheetah has been spelled correctly. I think this O is actually an A. So what should have happened is during that brainstorming session where there was incorrect spelling, the words have been written correctly on a little card or something, so that the child can now write them correctly in this session when they're writing their rough draft or the first draft. Okay, what is the sentence we're going to write? Oh, we're going to write about the cheetah as a fast runner, and the sentence we speak about the sentence so that the child has the sentence in their head. The cheetah is the fastest animal on earth. This is the sentence that we speak first, and then you allow the child to do the writing. So the child now does the writing. The cheetah is the fast animal on earth, but it can't run fast for a long time. Okay, now remember, we're in the phase of writing down your ideas. So you do not stop the flow of the storyline that's being written, whatever that you're writing about at this stage, because we are not in the editing phase. So no corrections to be done by teachers at this stage. What else are we going to write about? Oh, we're going to write about stripes that animals have that help to camouflage them. Wow, camouflage. That's a big word. Let's figure out how to spell that word. And then we have a little session and we figure out how to spell the word camouflage. And we've got a sentence. The child says, its stripes help to camouflage it when it hunts. Cool. Remember, we're not correcting any spelling. What else are we going to write about? We're going to write about, remember we had an animal that was sleeping in the trees, and we're going to say it sleeps during the day. And this is the sentence that the child and the facilitator, with a little bit of help, have made up. It sleeps during the day and it hunts during the night. Spelled N-I-T-E. Remember, we do not make any corrections at this stage. Okay, and we are writing, it likes to swim when it's hot. Now, there are new ideas as we're writing down, and that's fine. New ideas are being generated as the child is remembering things about these wild cats. Then we're going to write about the leopard. Remember, in the previous brainstorming, the child had not spelled leopard correctly, and we had little session. We wrote the word out a couple of times, so now we know how to spell the word leopard, and we've got it next to us on our little flashcard so the child can write. What are we going to write about leopards? A leopard likes to climb trees. And what else do we know about leopards? It sleeps during the day. This is what we come up with. And it hunts during the night. Okay, so we do have repetition here, but you're not going to do any correction at this stage. We're writing everything down. In the revision phase, you would come back and say, which things do we want to write differently, or say something different about animals, if there is that kind of repetition. And again, the word night spelled incorrectly. So as the remedial teacher, you automatically know that you need to now go and look at this word to do some remediation, because that is one of those irregular words and it needs to have visual memory associated with it. And what is the last thing we're going to write about? We're going to write about lions. And lions always live in groups. And we are not going to correct the spelling of live, L-I-U-E. We're going to correct it later. Lions always live in groups, spelled G-R-O-O-P-S, groups. That's fine. What else about lions? And they hunt together. They, the spelling of they is incorrect here, T-H-A-Y. It should be they, E-Y, so that would be an opportunity to do some remediation. They hunt together. The word child has spelled the word together correctly. So this is a word that has previously been taught, and they have remembered how to spell that particular word. So you could praise the child there and say, oh, you remembered how to spell the word together correctly. Okay, so we write down our first draft of whatever it is we're writing. We do not do we do not stop and do corrections while we are trying to get the words down on the page. The point of the exercise is to do the writing without stopping. Okay, let me see if I can move to the next slide here. Oh, wait, going backwards. All right, now we get into the next phase, which is revising. And in the revising phase, you're now encouraging the child to reorder, rewrite, revise, look at ways that things can be done differently. So we are going to do lots of reading of that first draft. Remember, reading and writing, speech and listening all happen at the same time. So we have to do a lot of rereading and thinking about what we've written so that we can decide which things we are going to change. And there are lots of different strategies that can be used here. You could maybe reduce some sentences if they're too long and complicated. You can combine sentences. You could expand sentences. You could do some adding of verbs and adverbs and adjectives and describing words. So there is a lot of avenues that you can explore during the revision stage. Okay, so let's see what our revision looks like. Just get this thing to move. Go. Oh, we're doing some editing. Editing and revising. In this particular case, we did them together. So for editing, we are looking to see what does require from punctuation. So for editing, this is looking at correct spelling, grammar, punctuation. And the crucial thing during remediation is you want the child to start seeing where they are making mistakes, because they are the ones that need to be able to edit their own work. So you give the child a different colored pen, like a green pen, and you say to them, change the things where you think there's mistakes, and we're going to do it according to this little formula over here. You might have some other little strategies that you use, but we're going to look at K for capital letters. So where do we need to put in capital letters? R for the overall appearance. Does this look okay? P for punctuation, and S for spelling. So we're going to have a look at some of the places where we can do editing. So revising is when you're looking at the actual content of the topics of what you've written. But when you're doing editing, you're focusing very much on all the capitals, punctuation, and so on. Okay, so we're in this stage now with the child. The child gets a red pen, in this case, in their hand, and is asked to, as we read this, we're going to see where we need to put capitals and full stops, and does it make sense, and are we going to make any changes? Okay, so we start at the top, and this is a heading. So headings always have a capital, so we're going to change the lowercase k to an uppercase C for cats, and the child makes that change. We read together. The cheetah is the fastest, but this is not spelt as fastest, it's spelt as fast. The teacher makes a mental note that they'll come back to that later, and we'll teach fast, faster, fastest, those words. Animal on earth. Child has not indicated that they think that the word earth is spelled incorrectly, even though in this case it's an O-F-E, and we know that earth is spelled differently. So we will definitely have a session later to correct the spelling of earth. Okay, so the cheetah is the fastest animal on earth, but it can't run fast for a long time. And that is the end of a sentence, so we put a full stop there. Okay, now we're reading it together. And the next sentence says, its stripes help to camouflage. And the child thinks about this and says, no, 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 this is not right, because cheetahs do not have stripes. So we can't say its stripes. The previous sentence spoke about the cheetah. So we can't be speaking about stripes over here. We actually are speaking about tigers. So we need to cross out this it's and make it the tigers. And the child writes that in. The tiger's stripes help. And there was, we thought about whether we need a word it over there, and then decided that when we read it again, we didn't need the word it. The tiger's stripes help to camouflage it when it hunts. Full stop at the end of that. It's the end of a sentence. Okay, so far we're making sense and we've done our punctuation. Next sentence was an it spelled with a lowercase I, and we are now doing capitals, so we put in a uppercase, capital I for it. So we capitalize at the beginning of sentences. So we are learning that rule. It sleeps during the day and it hunts during the night. The child does not put, we ask the child to underline words that they are not sure of the spelling and that they think are spelled incorrectly, so that we can go and look up the spelling later and practice that. And so the teacher makes a mental note that you will work on the word night, because this is spelled phonetically quite correctly. N-I-T-E makes night. But if we are talking about the night time when it's dark, in English it's spelled as an irregular word. So we need to learn that irregular word spelling separately. So we're still talking about tigers, I think. And the next sentence, again, started with a lowercase. It likes to swim when it's hot. Child capitalized that and put a full stop at the end. And now we're speaking about leopards. And we decided that we didn't need the separate heading here for leopards, so that got crossed out. And the lowercase a leopard at the beginning of the sentence needed to be capitalized. So we've got an uppercase A. A leopard likes to climb trees. Okay, and the child was able to recognize that the word climb was spelled incorrectly. C-L-I-M-E. The word climb is spelled incorrectly. And so wrote underlined it, because that's a word we're going to come back to and look in our dictionary how to spell it. A leopard likes to climb trees, even though it's spelled phonetically correctly using the magic E. Full stop at the end of that sentence, and then it sleeps during the day and it hunts during the night. Again, capitalize the I. Still doesn't think that the word night is spelled incorrectly, so we are definitely going to do a lot of work on that word. And lions, last sentence, lions always live in groups. The child was able to see that the word live was spelled incorrectly. L-I-U-E was changed from a U to a V, L-I-V-E, so they were able to self-correct. Live in groups, did not pick up the word groups spelled incorrectly, although it looks phonetically okay. Groups, O-O-P-S. So we are going to have to do a remedial session on how to spell group, G-R-O-U-P. And the last one, they hunt together. The they, phonetically quite correct, T-H-A-Y, they. But from a conventional English spelling, it is T-H-E-Y. So they hunt together. We will go back and do some sessions on that word. So this has given us a good indication of the exact words that we need to work on in remedial sessions going forward. Okay, so if you have learners in the foundation phase, they are going to stop at this stage. But if you have older learners, you can then rewrite this little story that you're doing with all the corrections. But before you write the final version, you will, as the teacher, you will now go and correct all those words like earth. You will do, you will correct earth and the night that is spelled incorrectly, and groups. And so you will ensure that all of those are correct in the final version, because we don't want children to be reading reading and taking the memory of the bad words to be reinforced. So we want the correct writing to be read in the final version. Okay, let's have a look, see where we go. And the final thing in the writing process is the publishing phase. And this is now where you turn your final work into a little poster or a little booklet that gets put in the little space in your classroom, little mini library, or it gets taken home and read to parents, or it gets read to higher or lower grades. But there is some kind of an audience. The crucial thing is that the work doesn't just sit in a book somewhere. Somebody else reads it, or the child reads it to somebody else. And that is what happens in the final publishing phase. Okay, so those stages of the writing process are what are required for your assignment that is up in the last unit. So it's the very last question that you need to do for the last assignment. And you need to just work through the writing phase very briefly, like similar to what I've done with a child, whichever age child you find, and see how it works for you and answer the questions in Moodle. I want to very briefly use the last 5 minutes just to go through another strategy that remedial teachers use a lot, which is very useful to get children to do lots of writing. And this is called a dialogue journal. Okay, I'm going to get to questions in a minute. Let me just do this. The dialogue journal is a useful strategy for informal conversations between the teacher and the child. And so this is done on an individual basis. What you do is you get a very small little booklet, and it's a personal journal. It actually belongs, the little, like a little hard copy or whatever, little small book. I'm talking, not a large book, just a small little booklet. And the personal journal belongs to the child. Okay, so the child can write their name on it and put a little picture on, and it is a conversation between you as the teacher and the child. And you can write about anything, and because it's personal, the dialogue journal is not shared with other people. It is only for the reading between the teacher and the child. And so it is a written conversation. I'm just going to give you one little example of what it looks like. And I know that these dialogue journals, they work really, really well. It doesn't matter the age of the child, whether they're very little, you can have small entries, or you can have much longer conversations between the teacher and the child. So here is an example where on the left side, the teacher has written her handwriting. And remember, you're not going to do this for every single child in your class, but certainly for those who are struggling and for children that you need to build a personal relationship with, and to encourage them to do writing. so it's a personal thing. So the teacher writes, "Dear Abby, I'm so happy that you're in my class this year. I know we are going to have a great year. You said you love to read and write, and that makes me smile. We're going to do lots of reading and writing." And also a crucial thing here is that children are learning to read other people's handwriting, and not only just to read text that has been printed, because we also need to be able to read a variety of different fonts and different handwritings as well. My daughter was a softball player, the teacher says. What position do you play? So the teacher is asking some questions here to elicit some kind of response, which she's hoping will then come back the next day, and that the child would have written about whatever she does with softball. The teacher is tapping into the interests of the child. And we know that that works best when you're trying to establish relationships and do any reading and writing things, that you write best about what you know. And she talks about her dogs, and she has a fish named Pineapple, and so on. And she says I am looking forward to your response, and it's from the teacher. Okay, so that child then on the next day takes it home, or the next week, and goes and writes a response to the teacher, and then the teacher gets it back, and you read it softly to yourself. You don't, this is not an opportunity for reading aloud. You read it and you write your response, and it goes back with the child, who then in their own time reads what you've written and writes their response. So it is a silent written dialogue. So here's an example of, on the other side, here's an example of some other dialogue journal, and this is the child's response, and the child says, "Dear Mrs. whatever her name is, I can't believe it either that Derek is leaving us, but he is getting old. Farewell, Captain." And so the child writes their little story over there. What you're doing as a teacher when you are reading what the child has written for your next input into the dialogue journal is that you are looking to see if there are spelling mistakes that the child has written, and you will pick up the spelling mistakes and you will correct it in the next entry. So here the child has written writing with a W-R-I-G-H, writing, incorrectly. So that word is not going to be corrected in the dialogue journal here, because this is like sacred space where the child has written, and a lot of children will write very personal things here. So you're not going to go and write all over it with your red pen. In the next entry to the diary, or the dialogue journal, the teacher will correct that word. She will use that word in a sentence somewhere and show that it is, and write it correctly, and make sure that then you write that word very clearly, so that when the child reads that in the next entry, that they have it correct. And if they then keep writing it incorrectly, then you will have, in a separate session, you will have a time where you can correct that particular word. Okay, so dialogue journals, please try and use them. They're really effective, and they give you insight into the child's life, and they are also really, really good strategies for assisting with children who have reading problems, writing problems, and all the emotional things that go along with that. So there's a quick slide here on the benefits. They assist with negating that power differential where the teacher is all powerful. They assist you to build strong pupil-teacher relationships, and it's a fund of knowledge. You find out a lot about pupils' lives that way. And It helps to improve fluency because there's no pressure of marking. And the child writes about something that's of personal interest to themselves. You spot errors, and then you can teach those errors in remedial lessons. It's unobtrusive and individualized, and you are, as a teacher, you are mentoring and modeling good behavior, good writing in your texts, and you're showing how to do appropriate writing skills. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the chat and see if there are any questions there. And see anyone who has hands up. Okay, Sue, I see your hand up. Do you have a question or a comment?
Just a question. Thank you for this. This is very helpful. But as somebody who's wanting to become or take on learners in really remedial relationship, I see the logic of the writing process and all of that. How many lessons would this take?
It would depend on the age of the child. So you could sometimes do all of that in one session, but you might want to spread it over 2 or 3 sessions, depending on how complex you're going to be writing and how complex the story becomes. So it's purely, and remember, in remediation, you need to be quite flexible. So you're gauging how the child is doing. Are we going to finish it this time? Or maybe you want to take it home and do some of it for homework and bring it back. And then we can do editing, when you're here, when you're back the next time. So it's pretty flexible. And you need to just see, depending on how the child is doing, if they're able to cope with a lot in one session or they get tired and fatigued, you might want to stretch it over other sessions.
And so I'm working with a learner quite informally at the moment, and I find that his memory, he fatigues easily, and he doesn't always remember between 1 week and the next. So it's almost as though a part of your session would have to go back and recap.
Yep.
This is what we were busy with, and so on.
Yes. Yes.
And also he writes very slowly, although he doesn't appear to be sort of dysgraphic in any way. He just writes slowly. So okay. Yeah, this would be at least a 3 or 4 week process.
Yep. A couple of sessions, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, thank you very much.
For slow writing, you need to give him lots of exercises in fine motor control, tracing of letters, doing lots and lots of strengthening of the hands, arms and gross motor skills and hands and things like that. Okay, I think there was another question. Nope, I don't see any other hands.
I do have a question, Dr. Fourie. Sorry to butt in.
No problem.
Just speaking to the flexibility of what we can do in remedial sessions and then kind of the rigidness of the mainstream classroom and assessment requirements. If our child that we are working with doesn't have accommodations, how do we become that bridge for them when their teacher is expecting assessments in writing and spelling?
Yes. So you need to then negotiate what the child can do, so that they're not being unduly stressed about, they have to write X number of words in X number of time, and you just know the child's not going to be able to do that. Because part of what you're also doing is ensuring that the child's emotional well-being is taken care of as well. And often you will find yourself as the protector almost of the child. And yes, it is that process of going and seeing how can we work through this, even though we might not have a proper accommodation in place. Yeah, so I'm going to stop there because we're getting into the next session now, but you're all welcome to please, if you need anything, you can always drop me an email. You can always drop emails to the tutors. Remember that we are still around for you until the end of the year, even though this has been our last session together. So thank you very much, everybody, for a great year together. And I'm looking forward to getting all your assignments in, and then we can get the final marks into the system and you can all be done. And please remember that if you are able to come to graduation next year, graduation is about in March. Remember to come and meet me in the foyer after graduation. I'm usually at the graduation ceremonies. You'll have to come up to me and find me and introduce yourselves so that we can actually meet in person if you're able to make it. So, bye for now, everyone. Okay.